technical glitch. We're back online. Hope you can see us fine. Give a little nod in there. All right. I cannot see my chat anymore, so I hope you can hear me. I'll just pretend you can hear me. So, hello everybody. Welcome again. Sorry for the little glitch when we were starting. My name is Philippe. I'm joined with my colleague Mohit. We are both part of the Salesforce Developer Evangelism team. And today we're proud to present what we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. We've been working on updating the Salesforce sample galleries with the Winter 21 release. What we're going to tell you today is what we've been working on precisely. Before I could jump into the presentation, I need to give you the forward-looking statement. Because we're a publicly traded company, please bear in mind that you should only purchase the product based on what is commercially available in the release. So here's our agenda for today. I'm going to walk you through what the sample apps are, and I'm going to give you some updates on the things that really changed since today. And then I'm going to talk precisely about what feature from the Winter 21 release we've included in the sample apps. And finally, I will finish with some other cool stuff which is not related directly to the release, but that was added to enhance the experience of the sample apps. All right, let's go and tour what are the sample apps. So what you can see here on this screen is the landing page for the Trailhead sample gallery. And this is a collection of different sample applications. There are two kinds of sample applications that you can try out. There are some recipes-based applications, and there are some business-focused applications. Now, recipes are essentially small examples which are not tied to a business use case, but they are technical examples. For example, we could have a recipe that shows us how to do composition with a parent-child relationship with Lightning Web Components. There are different types of recipes for different technologies. You have some of them for Lightning Web Components, Lightning Web Components open source, Apex, Visualforce, and that's a broad range of technical solutions. And we also have, on the other side, some more business-focused use cases, like technical use cases, service use cases, or a different set of resources. Now, whatever sample apps we're talking about, there are some core concepts which are shared by all of these sample applications. They are all open source. So the interest of these applications is that you can go on and click on each of these styles, and you can look at the source code on GitHub. They're all publicly hosted, and you can all check out the source code and try them out in your individual environment. Also, another important note about these sample apps is that they only use features which are GA. So we're going to cover some Winter 21 features here that are not necessarily new, but you may have heard about because they were already beta or in pilot. We only include GA features in sample apps. That's the golden rule here. All right. Now, this week is a really busy week because we just released the Winter 21 version on all Salesforce orgs, but prior to that, we also grew the collection of sample galleries, and we have two new applications which were added to the collection. The first one is called eCars, and it's a retail example that shows us how you can buy an electric car. What is interesting with this application is that it is the first of the sample apps that is a so-called one platform application. What I mean by that is that it's combining the power of the Salesforce platform with several Heroku applications. So it's a very technical application which uses several platforms. So it's very interesting to look at. There's a dedicated blog post on that if you want to learn more. And also at the same time, same day, completely different topic, we also got a new application called Apex Recipes. So Apex Recipe demonstrates best practices around the Apex language. You can see technical highlights, for example, on how to call asynchronous Apex, how to enqueue jobs, how to do proper permission checks, things like that. So it's a collection of best practices and small code examples. Now, we're going to dive into the Winter 21 release, and I'm going to head over and let Mohit present them.
Thanks, Philippe. Yeah, so the first feature that I want to present is enable secure access to Aura-enabled Apex methods. And we did this for all of the applications. eBike is a great example of how we did it. So starting Winter 21, users can access the Aura-enabled annotate Apex methods only if the user's profile or permission sets have the access to the Apex class. So we have built an open source tool called @Aura-enabled scanner that can help you, identify all the Apex classes that does not have, permissions and profiles, and you can assign permissions and profiles directly from there. So, for example, for e-bikes, we ran the scanner. As you can see in the screenshot, there were, we identified a lot of our Apex classes did not have, any profiles or permissions. So we've made sure that we provide these permissions to the right, profiles and permission sets here. The next feature that I'm so excited to present to you is about the safe navigation operator. So safe navigation operator allows you to avoid null checks. And a good example is how we have sort of implemented a safe navigation operator in Apex recipes. So what you see here is, how the code will be structured, if we did not have the safe navigation operator. So you'll have to, sort of go and add the null check to avoid the null pointers. So for example, what you see here is a map. Now, you know that maps, if the key value is null, if you try to get the value out of a null key, you usually get a null pointer. So you safeguard your code by writing if-else statements around it. Now you can completely get rid of that if-else statement with a navigation operator. And you can use this navigation operator in methods, variables, property chaining, all of these. So you make your code null safe with this. So, as you can see in the line number 8 and 9 in my screenshot, right, 9 and 10, you can see how we've used this safe navigation operator to sort of make our code null safe. Also, the next update that I'm going to talk about is Lightning Flow updates. So Lightning flows can be now versioned, and also you can provide context to it. So a good example is what we did to some of our flows in Easy Spaces application. So in Easy Spaces, we versioned our flows. So now the flows that are there in the Easy version is running under a version 50, which is the latest API version of the Winter 21. Also, we provided the context to the flows. So now you can provide a context. Earlier, you can only run the flow in user mode. Now you have the option to sort of run it in user mode, system mode, or the third one, which is you can run it either in system or user mode, depending on how the flow is launched, which is our preferred option here. So that it's under the context of the user to decide how they want to run. Over to you, Philippe.
Yep. Up next, dynamic form. So I mentioned earlier that we did not ship that as it became a beta. We had to wait for this feature to become GA to ship it. And a very good example of this feature in sample apps is in Dreamhouse. What you can see over on the left side of the screen is a record form for a broker object, for a house object, property object. And it has a quite lengthy record details section. And what we were able to do with dynamic form is essentially break down this long record detail view into several sub-tabs. So we could pick smaller sections and move them over to different tabs. We took, for example, the dates and the pictures into dedicated tabs. And we're also able to manipulate fields individually in the layout so that we can readjust them as we need, as you can see also on the right. The next update was around flows, and that's actually pretty exciting. You've probably all used Flow, and you saw that when the component that you're using in Flow gets complex here, for example, a flow screen component, when there's a lot of options in that Flow component, the interface can get a bit messy, and so there can be a lot of fields that are stacking next to each other. You don't have control over the type of input, so you don't have control over the order in which these fields are being displayed. So with this feature called custom property editors, you can provide a Lightning Web component that acts as a form for you to configure a flow screen component. And the component we're seeing in the two screenshots here are the same. It's just that the one on the right is updated with a custom property editor. With that, I was able to pick custom inputs like these radio buttons that you can see on input source or display mode. And I could also have dependencies between my fields. So for example, if I select input mode and I switch this to list, I can see choice labels and choice values. If I were to select pick list instead, I would see another set of values. So this is very convenient. This applies to flow screen component as well as invocable actions. And you can try it out. It's already available here in automation components. But wait, it's not over yet. We got more stuff and that is not directly tied to the release, and Mohit is going to start to go over this.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Yeah, so there's some more cool stuff that we have incorporated into our applications. So one of them is improving the accessibility of our applications. So at Salesforce, we believe that everyone should have access to the applications. Whether you are using screen reader or whether you are using any other devices, you should have access to our application. You should be able to use our applications. So we incorporated this testing automation to test our accessibility of our components. That is how accessible they are. And we have a framework called Sally. It's a node library that provides patterns and matchers. It provides different matches for just testing framework and also for web drivers if you want to do functional tests, right? So we audited all our sample gallery applications and sort of tested whether the components that we are using, the Lightning components, are they accessible? That is, somebody with a screen reader can access them. They can go through the application without having a lot of troubles. So we found out that for most part, our applications, were accessible. And we could do that by this automated test. So we wrote jest test. So as you can see, one which is highlighted in the red. So the jest framework, right? So with Sally added, it has another extra matcher called to be accessible. So we can inspect an element, or we can do an assertion on that element to find out if the element is accessible. So we created automated DOM accessibility tests using Sally framework, and this Sally framework means it is basically Sally means here it's an acronym. S here is Salesforce, and A11Y is accessibility. Okay. And we have a lot of good materials on what we did. There's a blog post already on developer site from our developer evangelist Alba. So thanks to Alba, actually, so you can go and read all the technical details of how we were able to handle this in all of our sample applications. The example that you see here is from LWC's recipes application. Now, there are a few more things that we improved to make it very easier for you to navigate our sample apps. So we use this feature called in-app guidance. So with in-app guidance, we created walkthroughs. So what you can do here is, for example, a good example is the Visualforce to LWC sample app. So you can go to the Visualforce to LWC sample app, and now when you actually browse through the tabs and the components, we will give you a guided tour of what this component is and how it is sort of working and how it is sort of built. So we make it easier. We are in the process of incorporating this in-app guidance in all of our applications so that you can browse through this and navigate this application quickly without having to sort of go through and read a lot of code. Although that's recommended to read a lot of code. Also, the next feature is code tours. So code tours, code tours is an extension. Basically, we auto suggest that extension once you install our sample gallery applications. So you'll start seeing an icon called code tour. So what this will allow you to do is it's going to help you understand it's going to help us communicate what we have done through the code, right? So there are guided code tours for you. So you basically click on these code tours, and it'll highlight the line, and it'll highlight the what the specific code is doing. So highly recommend that you check it out, install this code tours extension, and then play around with all the code tours that we have created. Again, we are in the process of sort of incorporating this across all of our sample gallery applications. A good example is Visualforce to LWC sample gallery app. You can go there and you can sort of browse through all these code tours.
But wait, it's not Christmas yet. There's still more.
Yeah.
So in the past release, we've already released a set of quick starts projects also to let you learn more about the sample applications. And we're happy to announce that this series of quick start will grow in the upcoming weeks. So we already have 5 badges here, which are all small project called quick starts on Trailhead. And we're going to add 4 new badges for the remaining sample applications. If you want to check out those badges, we have the URL here, which will guide you to them. they're all grouped into a trail, and this trail will grow even larger. We'll paste it in the chat after. All right, that's a wrap. That's all the content we wanted to highlight. Bear in mind that we could only show you highlights because we have only half an hour session. We did a bit more than that, and I recommend that you check out the blog post that is on our developer website. From there on, you'll find all the resources to check out the different features that we've added. Also, another note that is important, we were only able again to showcase GA features. We could not show you new pilots or new beta features because we are only shipping those on in the release. Now, if we could just go back to the slides. Yeah, thanks. There are also other features that are part of the Win21 release that could not made their way to the sample apps because we only add what is really relevant for the scenarios of the different apps. So I can recommend that you check out the release blog post that we've posted because there are a lot of additional resources like the accessibility post Mohit mentioned and a couple of other resources. So 2 links, just to sum up, that you need to check out: the blog post for the release and the link to the quick start projects, which are going to go grow even more, which will add to in the upcoming weeks. Thanks for that, and I think we're going to take some questions if there are any.
Yeah, let me check the chat window here, Philippe. So one of the questions was line 10, return should be written.
Yeah, well, we've got the slide.
There it is. We have lovely audience here. So
Live
yes,
debugging, yes, good catch.
that's a good catch on the
Yeah.
slide error here. Yeah, it should be written results. Feel free to chat on the questions. We do have like another 2 to 3 minutes. We would like to hang out and
Yep.
answer any questions that you have. I don't see a lot of questions here at this point.
Anyway, I want to take the opportunity to thank you again all for watching and for being patient while we were having all those technical glitches. I hope you learned something new today anyway, and you're going to try out some of these exciting new features. All right, anything else? Come on, don't be shy. We're still here to answer a couple of questions.
Yes. Was clear. Thanks for sharing the new features. So we have a feedback.
Thanks.
Thank you again. Thanks for the patience. We understand that we had some technical issues. Thank you for staying with us here.
All right, last one. Last chance to have a question.
Yeah, and we do have our Twitter handles here. I want to put that slide where we have our Twitter handles. So we do have our Twitter handles. Do reach out to us in case of any questions regarding these sample apps via our Twitter.
And before we close the stream,
There's one last question here. Does CPE support multiple instances of the same component on the same flow screen?
Yeah, so the custom property editor, or CPE in short, works for a single instance of a component. So it's just when you select the component, you see your CPE form, and all the values that you enter in that CPE or custom property editor are tied to a component instance. So you can use the same custom property editor for different components. You can also share the same custom property editor for multiple components, although I'm not sure that there will be a use case for that because generally components have different settings. Let me drop the links in the chat before we close the session. This is the link to the gallery trail mix, and this is coming up the link to the blog post, which has a lot of details and links to our additional resources.
All right. With that, should we wrap it up, Philippe?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Again, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.